door. Well, and he messaged me at 5 to ask what time do we start at 5:03 division, and I wrote it back, division meeting now, general meeting at 6.
If I could get your attention, we're going to go ahead and get started. Those of you who've been to other TETAF meetings know that we start by having the audience introduce themselves. So we could do it two ways. You can stand up and talk loud, or you can walk up to the microphone. So we'll start on the very back row. The gentleman in the red shirt.
Charles Jake with RACM.
There's some ladies standing in the back. Did you introduce yourself? We'll start by the roll call of the board. I'm here. Reeves? Here. Waite? Dudley Waite? Here. Jim Parisi?
He's not here.
Mr. Epling? Craig Ryan? Scott Christopher?
Here.
Rick Antonese?
Here.
EMS Division, Ed Rock. Trauma Division, Lisa Price.
Here.
Acute Care Division, Lisa Hutchison. The RAC Division, Wanda Helgeson.
Here.
The Pediatric Division, Lori.
Here.
Injury Prevention, Robin.
Here.
Education, Courtney Edwards.
Here.
Do we have a quorum?
Great. Well, thank y'all, everybody, for being here on a Saturday evening. I know you all probably have better places to be, but we are glad that you're here, and we will try to be as efficient as possible with your time and get you out of here. Jim was not able to make it this evening, so I will be doing his report, the treasurer's report. The first thing I do want to mention is that TETAF has, our 990 has been filed since our last meeting, and we are required now to do the expanded 990, and that should be online or available online. I've got a copy here that if the board would like to view that, I'm happy to share that with you all. So that has been taken place, or it's been filed. Want to review real quickly our year-end for last fiscal year that ended August 31st. And I know this is a little challenging to read. What I want to highlight is this is the summary of our P&L actual versus budget. And as you can see, we had budgeted overall for to bring in about $768,000. In actuality, we brought in $810,000 for the year. Most of that comes in the form of the survey income, and as you will recall, we had put in to our budget stroke surveys, which did not come at the rate that we had thought that they would, but what we did have some increases in were just the number of total trauma surveys that we were doing, and then we did do 4 surveys in New Mexico, so that did increase our total income for the surveys. The events we brought in, it was $8,110 for our BAT cruise, and so that was a success. And then we had, if we go down to our expenses, the personnel was a little bit less than we had budgeted for, and that was primarily because of taxes were less, and then also I think our insurance was a little bit less than what we had budgeted. The trauma survey expenses, they were, our expenses were a little bit more, but again, that had to do with the additional surveys that we did overall, and so increased income there. The administrative and professional, we did not spend as much as we had anticipated there, and I think the big thing there is Elizabeth Shoemaker, who some of you may have had some interactions with. She is the legal assistant at the firm that we have our office space at. She is incredible, and she is quite the deal. She does a lot of work for us, and charges us very little, and so we're very fortunate for that. The total net income for fiscal year that ended in August was just under $48 $30,000. As you all will recall, when we sat here last year, we actually had 3 months of operating income left in our account. And so I think there's a round of applause from the TETAF staff for the board making some difficult decisions with regards to the surveys, but bringing us into an ability to be fiscally solvent. It's been an incredible year as far as where we came from at this point. And I think what we've proven is that we are now a sustainable organization. Obviously, things can change, the climate can change, but we're very satisfied with the budget that we had and our budget moving forward now. This is obviously the 30,000-foot level on the budget, and I'm happy to take any questions. The board, you all should have received this file in full that has all of the P&L and all the detail to it, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, moving on. This is September's month-end closing, and again, as you can see, for the most part, we're well within our budget. We should be, since we just passed our budget, and a lot of these numbers are still at a point of being skewed. Let me see, I'm going to click over here. I think this is a little bit clearer. But survey income, $75,000. Our total expenses for September were just under $48,000, and leaves us with currently net income of $30,000. And I think one of the things to remember about the way TETAF runs is that we do invoice hospitals several months, sometimes almost a year out before their survey, and so that money comes in, and then the expenses follow after the survey is completed. So there's always, our accountant keeps those pots separated, that the income is not realized until the survey is done. But again, I think we're in good shape at this point in time for our year, and our budget, we appear to be on track so far in what we set. Any questions? Clear as mud? Again, if y'all have questions as we go forward, please do not hesitate to ask. The additional item that I wanted to include in the treasurer's report, and since Jim's not here, I can sort of take things a little out of order. We have been in discussion with a grant writer to consult with TETAF, and I know we've talked about this for some time, but we have, I believe, identified the individual. His name is Dan Kulika, and there we go. And he is, as you can see, a doctor, PhD, highly skilled, has an incredible experience. His CV is very, very impressive. He has been most recently with Parkland Health and Hospital System as the director of their HIV department. And when he was with Parkland working in that department, one of the things that he helped to do was he brought in a grant to that program that was in excess of $10 million, and then helped to manage that. And he is an MD. He was an emergency room doc, and then has gotten more into management and his hospital and health administration. And so he's very interested in health system development. He does have a keen eye towards emergency and trauma, has a great deal of experience when it comes to grant writing. And one of my first questions to him is, do you think we have anything? Do you think TETAF is an organization that could pull grant dollars down, and he was very confident in that. Absolutely, there are opportunities out there, and I think that's something that we've always felt, but somebody that's been in that realm. We have had discussions with him, and when we were first talking to him, I think he was really looking for employment, and our concern as a young organization is somebody of this caliber to bring on staff it would be a significant outlay of resources for TETAF, and I'm not actually sure that we could bring on somebody of his level in a full-time position. What we had done in our budget, the TETAF budget, is we had put in there, in our budget that we've passed, we have a $1,500 a month stipend for the contract, for a grant writer contract. In further discussions with Dan, he is comfortable in entering into a contract with TETAF instead of going the employee route, which again was the direction that he was hoping for initially. In discussing with him the amount of hours that it would take, he said, it could be limitless. I mean, and he sounds like the type of individual that is very, very focused. I can't imagine that he would be clocking in, clocking out. But what we were discussing is at least 8 hours a week. And so looking at some of the grant writers that we were looking at his qualifications, his background, again, his caliber, what I have come up with and some of the discussions with the executive committee is potentially looking at a contract that would pay him $100 an hour at 8 hours a week, which would bring us to $3,200 for a monthly contract. The discussion is that our term of the contract, I would like to see us enter into at least 6 months, recognizing that it's going to take some time to initiate things, to write grants. But I also believe that 6 months really is at a point where we review where we are with him and his efforts. And I think actually probably really looking at a year that we would be contracting with him. But I think initially for our return on investment, we should look at 6 months, review where we are as a board, as an organization, and move forward. And then looking at, I don't believe that he will have much in the way of travel, but I know that there are some different educational opportunities potentially, and then I would like for him to be able to attend our TETAF meetings. I think it would be important, especially strategic planning meetings for the board, to sit down and really discuss with him the opportunities that we have. That is just very briefly where we are. Jory, I know that you have had some experience with him and just his reputation and what he's done for the HIV program there. I don't know if you want to add anything at this time about him.
Sure. I think what the group in the audience probably wants to know is, well, what does he know about trauma? And so when I first met Dan, he actually was a professor at the University of Texas Health and Science Centers that's located there in Dallas, but he was in the public health, and he was a professor for public health. And so he started this will relate back to a lot of things, these video conferences through the Tandberg system. So he invited I would go out and do lectures on the trauma system to all the public health schools through that Tandberg system. So that's how I first met him. And then he actually participated in our regional RAC at the Trauma Systems Committee several times, and actually got involved in that. And then he took this job, left that, and went to another place, and he actually stopped coming. So has a keen interest in trauma. In fact, when he came to work at Parkland for the HIV clinic, he really came to me first and said, is there an opportunity for me to work in trauma? And at that time, we had no positions in trauma. So he is, Dynas pointed out, he is a physician, and most of his time as a physician was spent in the emergency department and what he called accident medicine from his country. So he is very interested in trauma systems development and the whole gamut. And in the HIV clinic is a grant-funded area at Parkland, and it struggles from time to time, as you can imagine, with grants. And he got involved in it, and he turned it to a $10 million operation. So he has a lot of credibility. There's no question about that. We'd be very fortunate to have him looking for grants and writing grants for our organization. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. We in Iraq, as some of you may know, we attempted to fund an employee, for business development and revenue generation and things like that. Not grants per se, but other sponsorships and such things. So that was a not a revenue positive experience. And so TETAF, as this gentleman might be employed, the one possibility is we have to be prepared that there isn't a grant and that we just spend the money. So just look in the mirror and say, be prepared to spend $40,000 if we're going to go beyond 6 months to 12. And it's just, it's seed money, and you hope it works, and if it doesn't, be prepared to lose it. It's like going to Vegas. And I don't mean to imply it's as risky with his credentials, but the other thing, I'm just curious in your discussions with him, or the executive group's discussions with him, so what resources does he use in support of getting grants for TETAF?
His resource, if we take him, if we have a contract with him, he uses his computer, he uses his cell phone, he uses his equipment, and his internet, his everything. Because if we get into a position where we're paying for those things, he's really technically an employee.
Right.
And then we get into trouble, obviously, with the IRS, and we don't want to go there.
Right.
So we need to be careful about how we enter into that arrangement, that we contract with him, and that's part of what we'll need some guidance on, is writing the actual contract with him to specify what we are looking for, what we are directing him to do. Because I know the IRS has tightened down on these contract employees that organizations, businesses are getting away with and not paying taxes, et cetera. And so we have to direct him specifically for, this is the project that we are looking for you to look for funds, grant dollars in the EMS trauma acute care world. And I know that's very, very broad, but we are at that point of, we want to see what the universe looks like.
So is it possible that he'll use like the state registry to state data? I mean, what for data resources to promote as data in support of grant awards?
Right.
Has that been a discussion of just?
I think there will be some of that, but then there's going to also be times that I think as TETAF we are going to have to pull together the information, the data that we have. I know some of the RACs have information, and some RACs don't, and maybe some RACs have the information and they don't want to share. But I think we are going to have to do the very best. Brenda and I think the board, I think the subscribers, we will have to support the information that he garners.
So part of the initial investment is just pursuing conceptual models of what might be, how to get there.
Right.
Well, let me just comment. He was a professor of public health. He probably knows more places to get data than most of us in this room, and different resources. And so that's part of his job. I mean, we just pulled some data out of the state registry, and you're going to see some of it tomorrow. And so I think that, as we rebuild, the registry will be a great opportunity. But right now, if we base our information on, the state registry, there's a lot of questions with that data. But there's a lot of data that's out there available through other resources, and that would be his job. And You know, if you think about creating a evaluation or a productivity, it's one thing for somebody to get that kind of money and produce no grants, but it's another thing for that individual to produce grants, you know, that perhaps, you know, they're not funded, but the lessons learned about why they're not funded and what additional information would be extremely valuable to this organization. I do agree with you. If you have somebody that's not producing grants, then we need to cut our losses immediately. But I think that, you know, we need to look at different options for some of the funding. The grants and the RACs and all these other opportunities are out there, you know, but we don't know exactly how long they're going to be out there, what our vulnerabilities are. And so, you know, we need somebody that understands that, and that was what his role was in his last position. He was a grant writer, and that was his sole purpose, and he was very good at it.
Well, I support the initiative. I just, as an organization, we need
No, I
to
agree.
also assess our own risks, and that's,
I think we appreciate that. The real question is, and this is what TETAF has to make the decision about, you know, we can continue to rock just like we're rocking, you know, or we can, you know, bite the bullet, and it is a gamble and it is a risk, but I don't know anybody, is there anybody in the audience that's out there pursuing grants? Anybody in the board? I mean, it's something that I look at, and I've written several grants, but it is a time-consuming initiative. And it does take, once you've written a couple of them that have been successful, you build on that level of success. And, you know, from my perspective, it just takes somebody that has a little bit more understanding about it than I do and time to dedicate to it. And I don't know about the rest of the board, but.
Some of the search that Brenda and I have both done on grant writers and looking at our area that we're looking at, Brenda and I have both come across, you know, several grant opportunities out there. I feel like TETAF would be well positioned for those. But having the time and expertise to follow and pursue, and part of it is, you know, having the data needs and everything else. The thing that I found very attractive about Dr. Kulika is we would not, with some individuals, we would get a great grant writer that doesn't understand trauma, EMS, acute care. Others, there are individuals out there that I've spoken with that have a great deal of understanding about our world, but they've never written a grant in their life. And Dr. Kulika seemed to be that great mix of both pieces of that rare individual that brings both things to the table. And I think, you know, Jory's right as far as his experience and knowing where to look for things, knowing where the data can be found, where the information can be found, I think is very attractive.
so our fiscal year started in September, right? Mm-hmm. So we're a couple months into it. Our budget was written with a $1,500 a month amount. So I honestly, I just don't remember what the bottom line was in our budget. The increase, we still have a surplus in the budget as a result?
Yes, we will. We will. And we had also budgeted, I mean, it's small, but we had budgeted that the grant writing position would start in September. Obviously,
Right.
the earliest it
So
would
we get
start
some
with December.
savings in
Yeah,
that
so
too, right?
there's a little bit there.
Okay, thank you.
Donna, I don't know I've never dealt with a grant writer before, but my thinking is that, and y'all may have had this discussion, or maybe you've run the numbers or talked about it, but I could foresee where you write the contract with this physician that he gets this $100 a month or whatever we decide as a fixed rate, and then based on if he produces, then he gets a cut of that money. So it kind of incentivizes him to be productive.
You know, that is exactly where I think we were thinking to go. But the more investigating we did on this, that is a big no-no in the grant writing world, is if there seems to be an incentive for, you know, pay for performance, then that is a huge red flag to, because that's what I was initially thought. That's how TETAF could get a grant writer in, is here's some seed money, do good, and I think what we have is an opportunity to have a contract with him, say 6 months, revisit that contract in 6 months, and if we do have, there may be an opportunity to increase his contract or potentially even bring him in-house as an employee eventually. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But Scott, that's exactly what I was thinking. But the more we investigated it, it was like, oh, nope, can't do that. And so my thought exactly, but when Brenda and I both investigated that was not,
Scott,
it was frowned upon.
Sorry.
No.
I know exactly what you're saying. In fact, we're still looking at the same thing to revisit our own business development efforts, that it's more of a contingency-based, services agreement, and I also understand how it doesn't play well in the grant area as opposed to sponsorships and other types of revenue generation. So I'm with you, but I also recognize that in the grant area, it doesn't quite play the same way as it does in the corporate sponsors or private sponsors, business development stuff.
Would we ask this individual to also help develop TETAF's process for the review of potential grants? I mean, there may be grants out there that, as a board, as a membership, the group said, it's just not us. So I think that would be important. And then the other question I would ask is it reasonable to say within this first, and let's use your 6 month as a guide, this first 6 months, we would like to see submission of X number of grants, and I'm really thinking of some low-hanging fruit that's not a lot of money that gives TETAF a learning opportunity on how to deal with that. I mean, it would be a wonderful problem to have for the first grant we received to be a $10 million grant, because I'm not sure that we have the infrastructure to manage that right off the bat. So some smaller grants with training wheels, I think would be helpful.
I think that is a perfect point, because I think one of the things that we found very early with TETAF was when we took on the idea of bringing the registry in to TETAF, and it was like, all of a sudden, we had gotten a hold of the bumper and realized we had gotten a hold of the Mack truck, and it's a big monster. And as a young organization, it was a lot to chew. And we were still at a point of figuring out how to get our paychecks. And so I think, and that is one of the things that he is very, very interested in, not just writing the grants. He is interested in the process and the development, and so that's the other bonus I see in him, is that he's not just a great writer and he submits it and he's gone.
Right, we don't want other potential grantors to see us as an organization who could not manage
Right.
a grant that we had received.
That's a great point, and because I think there are a lot of grants out there that we could lose our vision of the organization. Yeah, we got the 100,000 or the whatever, but it's not the heart of TETAF, the mission, our vision. And so I think that is an important part of, as a grant writer starts weeding through these, I think it is something that needs to go back through the board and through the subscribers, and that there is a discussion of that's doable, that's helpful, not helpful at all, that's been done, whatever. But I think that needs to be part of our process.
Do you need a motion to pursue this offer?
Yes.
I-
Budget amendment, probably.
Pardon?
Budget amendment too, probably.
Yes.
I so move.
Any discussion or additional discussion? Can we kind of break the rules and see if anybody in the audience has any concern? Thoughts? Does anybody in the audience have any thoughts on this? You're just all hungry and want to go?
They shouldn't be hungry.
Okay.
Hopefully not.
No discussion from the board members? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say aye.
Great. Thank y'all very much. I think this is another exciting point in our growth, and hopefully we're not just throwing the money away, but I think that definitely is a good point to make, because it is possible, and we're just not going to know. So,
It's a risk worth taking.
yes, I think so, and I think he's the right person, so I'm excited.
Is that budget amendment included in his motion?
Yes.
Dudley?
Okay. And that ends the treasurer's report, and there are no minutes at this to approve, so.
So I don't have any report. See how you do this? I'm trying to get to dinner too.
Okay.
Board
We will
elections.
pick the speed back up, because again, I know y'all have places to be. We are going to move into the elections portion of our meeting, and we have 4 positions that are up for election. We have the vice chair position, the secretary, and the board at large positions. And let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Well, we have our vice chair nominee is David Reeves, our current vice chair, and our only nominee is David Reeves. Our secretary nominee is Scott Christopher, and he is the only nominee for that position. And then we have 3 at-large nominees for 2 seats. Bert Corbell from El Paso, Kathy Rogers from Christus Health, Southeast Texas, and then Dudley Waite has been nominated to move from the secretary position to the at-large seat. And real quickly, I've asked David, you're more than welcome to make any comments on your behalf for your election, but I would encourage you to keep them brief, since you could lose it, so.
What's on the ballot sufficient?
Great. And David, I do appreciate your service to TETAF all these years. I'm very honored to always have you. You're a rock, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And then Scott, any comments that you would like to make?
I'm practicing tonight.
Oh, good. Well, Scott, as y'all know, he is a constant note taker, and we appreciate that over the years. And then to move into our board member at large, I have asked Bert, and I think Brenda gave Kathy a heads up, and then Dudley, if y'all would like to briefly, Bert, if you'd like to briefly step up to the mic and tell everybody who you are and your nomination speech, and in all of 2 minutes. So.
All of 2 minutes. My name is Brooke Corbell. I'm from El Paso.
Can you pull that down? There you go.
I'm short, and the Irish one. But I'm Brooke Corbell. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I'm the Administrative Director for Trauma and Flight. I've been coming to the TETAF meetings now for about 4 years. I enjoy this group, but I also, Kathy's awesome, so is Dudley, so you've got a tough decision. Thank you.
And Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Rogers. For those of you who don't know me, I'm from Beaumont, Texas, RAC R. Been a nurse for a very long time. I've been a trauma manager for 15 years at my institutions. Started the trauma program, and I'm up for my 3rd redesignation. Very active in EMTF 6, past president of TTCF, on the steering committee of EMTF 6, so I just really think that I would love to be on this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Dudley, any comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know I've been on the board for quite a while, and as the secretary, some things have changed, and and need to not be as involved as some of the executive committee board commitments are, and but still would like to remain active. And looking around, I'm the only paramedic current. Well, I don't know if I'm the only paramedic, but I'm the only paramedic. There may be some paramedic RNs, but anyway, I've been doing this a really long time. For those of you that don't know me, I'm from a little suburb of San Antonio named Schertz, and I'm a pretty quiet, often outspoken EMS director that really doesn't speak his mind too often, but would appreciate a chance to continue on the board.
Thank you. What we have, the way we do our elections, I know many of you all are aware that each RAC will be given a ballot, and so if you are the RAC representative, if you can come up to Brenda and get your ballot, mark the individual that you are voting for, and return those to Miss Brenda, and we will tally those.
I don't guess y'all could stand in alphabetical order.
Be a lot easier on them here, guys.
On the chair's alphabet.
Hey, Dudley. Dudley.
Let them stand in alphabetical order.
Dudley.
Tell them did it.
I was going to say something nice about him, but... Well, while Brenda is finishing that, I was going to say something really nice about Eric Epley, and he is our one board member that is elected by the subscribers that he has chosen to not run for. He was nominated, but he decided that he was going to relinquish his seat, feeling like his time was less and less, and he didn't see any increase of his time to be able to devote to the TETAF board. And so I appreciate him making that decision. However, I think personally, I was sad. Eric was the first individual that I talked to about. Yes, you may.
I have D, F, J, I thought I saw Connie, L, and P.
I'll take Pete. I thought Eric was good.
Thank you.
This is bad. You're saying something nice about Eric. And it's not even...
I know. Well, y'all can repeat it if you want. But what I was going to say is, somebody had approached me a long time ago about taking this position with TETAF, and I was very, very reluctant about doing it for a long time. And I'd finally gotten to a point, it stayed on my heart and on my mind for a long, long time. And Eric was one of the first people. We were sitting at a hurricane conference in Galveston, sitting in the back of the room, chit-chatting, trying to be quiet, and I said, hey, I want to talk to you. And I said, okay, about what? And I thought we'd talk later. Well, Eric wanted to talk about it then. So we started, I told him, hey, what do you think about TETAF? And he's like, well, I think it really could be good, but I'm really worried about, what they're going to do as far as leadership. And I said, well, what would you think about me applying for that position? And he made an exclamation in the back of the room, and I wasn't sure if it was a negative one towards me or a positive one. And I was like, and of course, everybody turned around. They're like, what's going on back there? But it was a very positive exclamation. And so he was the first one that I really felt like, beyond the first individual that approached me about this position, that affirmatively felt like I was the right person for it. And so I'm very indebted to Eric and his service to TETAF. I'm sad personally because he has been part of my little trauma family for some time, and I'm sad that he's not going to be on the board, but I have a feeling he will still sit in the back of the room and be as loud as ever. So we all have that to look forward to. So, and again, I'm sad he's not here to hear me say that, but oh well. Y'all can just say I said really mean things, but he's a good guy, and thank him for his service. We're doing TETAF update a little differently this month, and that is primarily because we now have a communications person, a communications consultant, and we will be coming out with our first newsletter at the beginning of December, and then doing a yearly wrap-up. And so instead of me reading my update, we're going to reformat that a little bit. When we meet in person, I will do more of a PowerPoint. This is sort of a PowerPoint TETAF 101, and just recognizing that at the November meeting, we have a lot of people that may not have attended a TETAF meeting before. But briefly, we are a 501c3 organization. I was the first staff person hired, and then Brenda followed me by, I think, 12 days in 2009. And we exist to stand in the gap, to work with the state, work with the RACs, work with the providers out there to further develop the trauma and emergency healthcare system in Texas. This is our board. Currently, and there's obviously going to be a few changes to that after tonight. And then these are division chairs, and there may be a few changes to those as well. The one that I do want y'all to note, and you may have heard of him before, but Ed Rock has just recently accepted Jory's appointment to be the interim division chair for the EMS division. We are thrilled about that. Dr. Rock, for those of you that haven't been around for 3 years, he used to be the chair of GTAC since its beginning until 2008, and he is an incredible leader, lots of energy, and so we're excited about that, and just the direction that we think that he'll be able to take the EMS division. And then obviously the division chairs, who most of them are sitting up here, also serve as members of the TETAF Board of Directors. Most of y'all know this. As far as our funding, we've spent a significant amount of time talking about the direction that we are going now, that most of our funding has come in from subscription fees and our survey fees to date, but we have expanded our private donations in the past year, and then looking for the grant dollars. TETAF, our primary service areas are the trauma designation survey process. This was really the launching pad for TETAF as an organization as far as the service. We provide a very high level of service, I believe, and many of the surveyors I know are sitting in the audience. And I appreciate y'all's service because I know there's a lot of time and effort that goes into those surveys. Just real briefly, those are our survey fees, where we are, and those were passed last year. There was an increase last year. We do provide a $2,000 savings if you are part of a subscribing RAC, which 21 of the 22 RACs are subscribers. And then those are the fees for the level 3 facilities. And again, there's a $2,000 savings. Stroke surveys, we have just started those, and I'm not going to steal the thunder on that with the acute care division update, but we have begun surveying the stroke support facilities. Those are the fees as well, and again, there's a savings for those facilities that are subscribers. We have been involved in a number of different initiatives in the last couple of years, especially with regards to advocacy, education, involved with legislative education is where we focus a fair amount of time during the legislative session and trying to update the subscribers and public on our initiatives. During this past session, some of our successes there were several attempts to do away completely with the driver responsibility program. That did not go forward, and in light of a $10 billion state budget deficit, there was also talk of the appropriation being much smaller than it was. It was decreased, but again, in light of the $10 billion budget deficit, there were funds over $115 million that is appropriated. Also been involved with increased funding for EMS providers in the Medicaid program, and then we're involved in a number of different educational offerings. One of the things that we started in May, and I think has been very widely accepted, tonight is our first night, and I'm just now remembering that this teeny tiny little camera in front of me is photographing me, and I should have been smiling instead of trying to yell at Dudley and stuff. But that has been well received. It is available on our website. You can go back and listen to see the committees that have already taken place, so that is an archived recording that's there. And then we've been involved with rural revision work groups with Chapter 157 open, and continue to be involved with the registry and the ACS survey that took place. Our new TETAF resources, the communications consultant I mentioned, we've just put a consulting group under contract with TETAF as of this month, and really excited about what they bring to the table. And again, they happen to be an individual, a group that has a lot of healthcare experience, and so we are not teaching them square one on how to advocate right things for our world. So thrilled about that. And then, as we've talked about with Dr. Kulika, bringing him on as a contract. These are our upcoming meetings, TETAF meetings. We've reduced those. It's essentially one a month. We had several months where we met in person and had a call, and now we have tried to streamline that a bit, and we do not have a December call, recognizing that after everybody leaves here, we'll talk to each other in January. TETAF, I think there's a lot that we are doing, but there's so much more that is out there in the potential, and we've already talked about with Dr. Kulika. Look for our first real newsletter to come out early December, and then we will have a year in review publication that will go out. But I think we've done a lot, but there is so much we can do. And I think one of the things that was said to me recently is in 2009, we spent a fair amount of time, that was our first year, explaining to people who we were and knocking on a lot of doors. And what we found this past legislative session especially is people were knocking on our doors and calling us and asking us for information. And so it's been a really exciting, 2-year period, and the change has been significant. But again, we've done good things, but I think we've got even greater things to do. And so I appreciate y'all's support. So that's it right now on that front.
Donna.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah. I think the newsletter's a home run. It's a great idea. And not that I want to micromanage this organization or anything, but I guess my thinking is if we eliminate this formal TETAF update as an agenda item, will that limit our ability to have dialogue on whatever during this meeting or the phone conference meetings?
What my plan is that we will still do a TETAF update. It will be more in this form where it's more of, this was sort of TETAF 101, but what I would like to do is more of sort of the PowerPoint presentation when we're sitting here, that it's not just me reading through a document. And then the newsletter recaps anything that I've said and then expands on some of the things that are happening with regards to legislation or agency work or anything like that. So, and the newsletter, it's not a printed newsletter where it's all electronic. You'll have a table of contents at the beginning. If there's anything that interests you, you click on it and it'll take you right to that. And so we're going to try to be as efficient as possible. But again, my hope is that we still have the dialogue. It will just sort of be in a different format. Any other questions? Okay. Wanted to update on an issue that has come forward. Let me pull this real quick. I know many of you, the RACs especially, are aware that there has been a great deal of discussion that has been ongoing really since TETAF came into existence as a staffed organization about RACs paying into TETAF. And as many of you may recall, in 2009, TETAF, before 2009, TETAF had membership dues, and the RACs paid in as members. In February 13th, 2009, and I remember the date very well because I had been on staff all of 44 days, if anybody was counting. All of our funding seemed to just evaporate at that point in time because DISHES had a conversation with us and the RACs that they could not be members of TETAF. And so at that time, we rolled up our sleeves, talked to DISHES, and came up with the idea of a subscription fee and going at it from that angle and changing some of the wording, but changing also just the way TETAF operated. And so in 2009, in June of 2009, DISHES did approve the RACs becoming subscribers of TETAF, and we moved forward, and everything was good. And this issue has sort of always bubbled up about the RACs and them paying any kind of fee to TETAF. I know that the RACs this year, late this summer, received their new contracts from the state. And while the wording stayed the same, the emphasis on some of the wording in the contract had been highlighted. And it was with regards to the RACs paying any kind of fees to an organization that would participate in lobby activities. And so there have been several discussions that have taken place over the last couple of months about this issue. And I'm sorry, I need to focus on finding this letter real quick. So earlier this week, I've been working with TETAF's legal counsel on the issue, and I think what DISHES we had some conversations with DISHES about our activities as a 501c3 organization and whether we lobbied or not. And really the bottom line of TETAF as an organization is we are a 501c3. The IRS does allow insubstantial amounts of lobbying. There is no absolute marker on what its insubstantial is, but we are allowed insubstantial amounts of lobbying. We are not a lobby organization. We are focused on advocacy and education. However, we do get into those areas where we can argue what the meaning of is, and I recognize that. And so I think to split hairs at times and say, well, oh, no, that's not lobby, that's advocacy, that's education. I don't think that serves us well as an organization. I don't think it's honest. And again, we fall well within what the IRS requires of us as a 501c3. In visiting with our legal counsel on this issue, they felt very strongly that part of the reason why the IRS writes the rule the way they do for 501c3s is to recognize as a nonprofit, you are usually advocating for some kind of issue, some kind of, just in your very existence, you are educating the public, you're bringing awareness, that most nonprofits don't just exist just to lay low. They exist to further a cause. And so TETAF's position is we are not a lobby organization. We have activities that could fall into categories that would be deemed lobbying. And so have tried to make it clear that any activities that could be considered lobbying do not come from the RAC subscription fees. And so we have this letter that has gone to Kathy and what we've and to the department, and what we've asked is that that they respond what their determination is on can RACs continue to pay fees to TETAF. The bigger issue with, and we'll make sure that both this letter and the memo from our legal counsel are posted. But one thing that I just wanted to point to is this is the lobbying guide by the Ethics Commission in Texas about what is lobbying, what is not. And I think we so often think of lobbying as, well, I guess I do, big dinners and golf games with legislators and, you know, the high dollar stuff. But if you get down to what lobbying is, it is, and I will look here, the lobby law regulates direct communications to members of the legislative or executive branch of state government. Executive branch is a member of the executive branch of state government, includes an officer, officer-elect, candidate for, or employee of any state agency, department, or office in the executive branch of state government. So while we often think of lobbying as just legislators, I mean, in its true term, its true definition by the State Ethics Commission, any discussions that we have with dishes about trauma rules or funding issues, et cetera, can be deemed lobbying. And so that's where I would argue that I think most 501c3s do at some point in time do activities that can be deemed lobbying. And so I think, again, back to trying to answer the question, can RACs continue to participate in organizations like TETAF? And I should point out, DISHES has not singled out TETAF in the contract language. It is broad in its terms, but I think most RACs did recognize when they read that, they were like, oh, that's TETAF. And again, it does not say specifically TETAF. I want to make that clear. But I know several of you have been involved in some of the discussions with the state, have had discussions with me. There's been a lot going on, but I'm hopeful that at least for the next 6 months, we can, you know, get this answered. And I recognize that this is going to be a constant. We will probably, and we've actually already visited with Jane Guerrero and her staff about this, that it just is something that we will have to talk about, you know, every 6 months to a year. Where are we? Where's the temperature? Where, you know. But it's very important to TETAF as an organization for our budgeting purposes, but even more important, I think, to the RACs. And we do not want to put the RACs in any kind of conflict with their state contracts, bottom line. And we need an answer. So any comments, questions? I'll put up on the screen the memo from our attorneys. And again, I know it's difficult for many of you all to read back there. I apologize.
Yeah, so the issue is not for TTAF directly. The issue is for those RACs who are paying their subscription fees using EMS, RAC or EMS tobacco funds, and those are the dishes contracts to RACs that have this statement, this explicit, bolded, emphasized statement in them. I think we're all marching along nicely and hoping that this is a non-issue by March when we roll out the next round of subscription fees.
Yeah.
Dinah, you mentioned a couple of things there that, so I've gone back and forth on this issue a few times, as you're painfully aware. But you mentioned a lot of times people think of lobbying as golf outings and dinners and supporting causes that a legislator is in favor of. And that kind of thing. And one of the things I know you've been adamant about is our commitment to not use money from RAC subscription fees for lobbying. But could you give an example for 2011 of the things that you feel, the dollars that were spent by TTAF? I don't want exact, but what did we spend money on that potentially could be viewed as lobbying?
Postage. Stationery, and that would be primarily for the purpose of, we did send some letters to legislators about different issues. The paper that I printed my testimony on, probably the most significant portion of anything that could be deemed lobbying would be my time, my salary. But in the grand scheme of my entire day, my entire year, it ends up being an insubstantial amount of TTAF's overall budget. And then the only other thing would be our day at the Capitol. Just for full disclosure, we paid for breakfast at the day at the Capitol. All the other resources, all the other items that were provided and printed were by THA and some of the other organizations that participated. So we do not buy lunches or dinners for legislators. I have several opportunities that I attend different legislative functions. If there is any, we do not, TTAF absolutely does not support candidates. We do not engage in any kind of political expenditure for campaigns. That is an absolute no-no for our 501c3. We do not do that. I do have a great deal of interaction with legislators. I am invited to different receptions, but those are not ever on TTAF's. There is no outlay of TTAF funds. It's usually me as an individual attending those receptions.
And the other question I had, based upon the definition of lobbying, which is really quite scary if you've never read that, but Dinah did a good job of putting it up on the screen, is the money that we spend to broadcast these meetings, not our meeting, but GTAC, the money we spend to broadcast GTAC, does that come from RAC subscription fees?
There is a portion of that that is helping to subsidize, yes.
Okay. And then for the RACs in the room, I don't know, this is embarrassing. I sure am glad Eric's not here because I'm his treasurer. And I'm not exactly sure which fund out of what pot can pay for who and to do what. And anyway, long story. But the scary thing about this, and the thing that bothers me a little bit, is that we have brought up the fact that coming to GTAC, by the definition, is a lobbying effort, because we are attempting to make change to regulations, and so there are RACs that pay people or pay for rooms for people to come here. And so the RACs may be violating their own contracts themselves, even though they're not subscribed to themselves. So I guess maybe that's where they're not going to do that. But to me, this is an awfully potentially ugly Pandora's box that we're potentially opening. So I applaud the work you've done on the letter. I think that was extremely well crafted for all those that had a hand in that. I do hope, I agree with Rick, I hope we get this resolved by March. We've asked TETAF, all of us have asked TETAF to do a lot of things that in hindsight we look back, and now that we know the definition, we can say, wow, that's lobbying, that I really don't know how we as a group of concerted stakeholders will get things done if things get more anti being able to have subscription fees. It doesn't sound much when Donna said we spent money on postage and things like that, but you know, the day at the Capitol, the showing up and when nobody else could come to Austin to testify about a bill that was potentially damaging, the getting rid of the driver responsibility program and the number of hearings that Dinah went to make sure that a voice was there for the trauma system to say, no, don't do it, it's bad. Those type of things, even though we're not giving money to anybody, it's not bad. Those type of things, if they go away, are going to be damaging to each and every one of us. And so, as well as to our colleagues in the state regulatory agency. So, anyway, I'll shut up now. But anyway, I appreciate the work you've done and look forward to seeing where this goes from here.
So the net is a reply from Dishes that agrees, puts it to bed. We move on.
Yeah. We'll hope for the best. And I think, you know, one of the most educational thing, or since I took this position, and I often say that I'm a recovering lobbyist, and I think I'm pretty well recovered now, but to move from a lobby position to a 501c3, I was always very, very scared of the term lobby. And it was like, oh, no. We are advocacy, we are education. And I still say that. But I also recognize in the more education that I've done on the 501c3 requirements is that 501c3 and lobby are not, they can coexist, and they do coexist, and the IRS does allow for that. But it's how you manage it and how much you do. And obviously, if you're an American Heart Association, your budget is so significant that what you're doing on any kind of lobby activities is so insubstantial. We do run into some challenges with TETAF, and that is why we have chosen to go with the H election to further define what we're doing. For the current 2011, when we file our next 990, it will have the H election, which will further define what exactly we are allocating towards lobbying. And that's not, we did not make that election to say we're going to lobby more. We made that election to better quantify what it is we do, to be more transparent about what it is we do as an organization that could be termed lobbying. So again, I think that's another thing, is that the H election, oh, that means you're lobbying more. No, it's just in how you report it. And we are saying that we are going to be that much more careful in fully displaying what we are doing. There is nothing to hide.
I'm going to quit too, but if they just let the IRS rules govern the issue, then it's put to the test in every organization's audit processes instead of trying to put special words into contracts.
Right.
More special emphasis.
Yeah, as I start, and this is the very last thing I'll say, as I reported, we have filed our 990. We do an expanded 990 now, and that is required of most, if not all, 501c3s now. And there are significant more questions that have to be answered by the organization to maintain your status as a 501c3. That is not a status that just is given out freely anymore, and they are cracking down, and they are taking away 501c3 statuses. I keep getting these updates, like, so it definitely makes you sit up and want to comply with, I mean, if you're not already complying, it makes you want to just educate yourself to make sure that you are fully within their lines. And I think I feel very confident in that we are. So. Okay, enough.
Okay, we're going to get started with the division reports. Lisa Hutchison couldn't be here tonight, so for a quick update, I'd like to let you know that we had a successful stroke symposium hosted by St. David's here in Austin. That went off really well in October. Additionally, the first support stroke center has been designated in Texas, and we have surveyed our second, and we'll wait for the results on that. A third one is being scheduled now, so those are starting to happen. I'm happy to answer any questions about acute care in Lisa's absence. Additionally, the Cardiac Committee for GTAC has asked for some discussions with the TETAF Acute Care Division to see where we can help them with their mission. We're meeting with them tomorrow, and we'll update you on where that's going. Okay, let's do these reports. EMS, Ricky or Sunny?
Hey, Joe, he needs to talk to this microphone, so for the webcast.
Let me just remind everybody for the webcast, you need to talk into the microphone, please.
Maybe. In the absence of Dr. Rock, the 7 members that we had available today, we had our mini elections, and since he was absent, we decided to make him our permanent chairperson for EMS committee, or EMS division. We continued our discussions on our ability to try to get more EMS providers into the division. We hope that with Dr. Rock's presence on the TTAF as the EMS division chair, that it might be able to draw a few more EMS providers in. Continued discussions on the potential for a EMS leadership course for EMS directors or administrators. We also continue discussions on trying to further making EMS a essential service. So those are really only 3 things we kind of touched on today. Biggest thing was to get Dr. Rock in as our chairperson. So thanks.
Any questions for Sunny? Thank you. We'll move on to education. Courtney?
So once again, we combined meetings and had 11 attendees. For the education component, we reviewed the Texas Emergency and Trauma Care Partnership that was written and submitted to the Texas Registry in October, discussed what we felt about that and reviewed it. We also reviewed the fact that there is the TTAS Speakers Bureau and a source for information if you're looking for speakers, and to continue to expound upon that by including people's information as they see fit. We also are moving forward still with the pediatric trauma education course, and also the Texas Injury and Violence Prevention course, which I'll let Robin talk more thoroughly about. We also reviewed some of the TCAR courses that are going to be offered throughout the state: in January at Temple, in March at Beaumont, and then in May in Tyler.
Any questions for Courtney? Thank you,
We're
Courtney.
just going to access that mic.
Please.
Just to add the pediatric part, we also talked about PCAR, which is a pediatric equivalent to TCAR. And since that course will not be offered as often, the pediatric facilities are going to work together to try to spread those out throughout the year. Because we have 2 back-to-back. There's one in Austin here in April, and then one in Houston in March, so they're back-to-back. We're looking to have one in Dallas in the fall. And then Janet also mentioned maybe looking at one in Driscoll as well. So we're going to try to space those out a little bit. Janet did talk a little bit about GTAC and the Pediatric Committee's initiative with pediatric categorization, and she'll give us updates on those as they work through that process. And she shared a little bit about her survey process as being the first pediatric facility to seek level 3 designation as well. And then the only other thing too for the pediatric group is it's been very, very difficult to find a day of the month and a time that works for everyone's schedule. We're still trying to do that. So if you do participate in the committee, if you have feedback about that, if you could email that to me, that would be greatly appreciated.
Regarding injury prevention, as Courtney mentioned, we will continue to support the Texas Injury and Violence Prevention Conference. There are some save the date flyers out on the back table, so I encourage you to get that. The cost of that conference is $135. It is a very in-depth 2 full-day conference that goes into all aspects of injury prevention. So that is a collaboration between GTAC, TTCF, and TETAF to bring that offering to you. It is going to be offered June 20th through the 22nd of 2012. We're doing that, of course, alternating with our TIPS program. So we are planning to do the TIPS program again in 2013. We talked about moving that potentially to a summer date, a June date, still up in the air, but good discussion about moving that to a June date to coincide and do a truly annual offering opposite of the GTAC program. Also, that seems to be a higher attendance for our TTCF meetings, so we might capture more attendees if we do it that way. But we'll start the planning of that soon. We've talked in the past about the 3-pronged coalition with GTAC, TTCF, and TTAF for our injury prevention strategies throughout the state. We will continue to support that, but we also want to bring back and pull it back to a 2-prong as well with TTCF and partner with them to actually bring some hands-on programs to the trauma coordinators and EMS agencies, some canned programs that they can take, customized to their facility, and they're ready to go. We support the fact that GTAC looks specifically at evidence-based and research, and we will integrate that as it becomes available, but we will start pretty quickly moving out some programs for these facilities. We also discussed the development of injury prevention programs in our committee meeting through the matrix and shared structures for 3 programs. And those 3 programs were MVCs, residential fires, and school-age shootings. And we'll put that information on the TTAF website for you to access and use at your will. The IP resource manual, again, is on our back burner. It's one of the things that we definitely want to put together. With the development of these programs that will go out next year, I feel like that's a great basis to start that resource manual. So that will grow and that will come out as a product from this committee.
Good.
Any questions for injury prevention?
Thank you, guys. I know how hard y'all all work. I appreciate the work you do. And you're right, Lori. It's hard to find that right day, but we'll keep trying. We'll move it till it works. Yeah. Okay, Wanda, right?
Wanted to let you know that the new chair for the RAC division will be Daryl Pyle. We appreciate him stepping up to the plate there. And we've really been working on the RAC rule. We have accomplished some things, but as with anything, once you start moving the dust off things, you see new things underneath. And so we have a few more issues that we believe we need to discuss and get in those rules. And that's going to be the focus of the development workshop.
Wanda, thank you very much for leading the RAC division this past year. I think your leadership, not only on that division, has been very, very appreciated, but the work that you've done with this board and the input that you've had has been very, very valuable to us as an organization and us moving forward. And so I am pleased to have Daryl step up, but it's always bittersweet because you have done a great deal for TTAF, and I appreciate that greatly. But you're not off the hook until December 31st, so.
And that in no way takes you off the finance committee either. So just thought I'd throw that in. Okay, Lisa Price with trauma.
All right, we did meet this evening, and We did have our elections, and I will have the pleasure of continuing to serve as the chairman of the Trauma Division Committee. We also did review our 2011 Trauma Division goals and the 3 projects that we're working on currently. We are almost ready to roll out our administrators education project, and I'm super excited that that project is finally coming. Thank you, Lord. Where we're going to have a product that we're going to be proud to distribute and have, and that should be very soon.
Very soon.
The next thing, Gina Pickard has been leading a group on, it started out as developing minimum activation criteria and has kind of morphed into developing a guidance document, a white paper, if you will, on how to develop activation criteria that is appropriate for your facility. We decided instead of giving them a fish, we're going to teach them how to fish. And so that has, work group has been working very hard, and when we come back in February, we're hoping to have kind of a draft document and then hope to have a final document for distribution later on, May or June. Also, the Data Management Registry Education Work Group has been very active in developing curriculum and looking for speakers so that we can develop that and have that ready to roll out. We're hoping October-ish of 2012. We're hoping to have that as a really comprehensive educational opportunity for registrars and trauma program managers so that they have some resources and to learn how to use their data. We did also discuss our 2012 Trauma Division goals. The things that we talked about was, of course, keeping on top of the rule revision process, working with the state registry to help develop the types of reports that trauma program managers need to fill out their trauma applications and also to move forward with their programs. Helping to develop language about what an appropriate alternate pathway would be for non-board certified surgeons. Also, to develop a kind of a support group for trauma facilities that are upgrading their designation from 4s that are going to 3s, 3s that are going to 2s. It's not as easy as just a few extra things, and especially for those that are moving from a 3 to a 2 world, it's a whole different thing, and those folks have said they need some support with that. We also talked about the continuing problem of trauma coordinator turnover, trauma program manager turnover, and that's such a big thing. We are hoping to partner with TTCF to better understand this problem and perhaps come up with some ideas. We're hoping that the Administrator's Education Project will help with that, so that's it. Well, our next meeting will be by conference call in January.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for trauma? Lisa Price? Okay, thank you all.
Well, I know that part of the reason y'all are all sticking around is to find out the results of our election. And it was a rather tight race, but it ends up that David Reeves will be our vice chair. Scott Christopher will be our new secretary. And again, thank you, Dudley, for your years as secretary. And Scott, look forward to you joining the executive committee. And then for our at-large slots, it was a tight race. But Kathy Rogers will be our new board-at-large member. And Dudley Waite will remain on the board, but change his seat and be board-at-large number 3. And I appreciate so much, Bert, your dedication to the trauma system, to TETAF, and I hope that you will continue to be involved. But thank you very, very much. The nice thing about the nominations the last 2 years is I have no idea who's going to win, and I said it last year and I said it again this year. I mean, it's a little bit different this year with just the one extra person nominated, but I felt very, very comfortable with whoever was going to serve, that TETAF would be well served. So thank y'all very much, and thank you for your nominations. That's open discussion, Madam Chair.
Anybody in the audience have any issues they want to bring forward? Anybody from the board?
I don't know how many of y'all remember Sean and Jenny Carter. We haven't seen them in quite a while. Had the opportunity, and for those of you that don't, that haven't met him, Sean is, I call him a kid, but I didn't realize he's 28 years old. But he was involved in a motor vehicle crash in which he was a passenger with a driver who was driving under the influence. The driver walked away, but Sean didn't, and had suffered a traumatic brain injury. And those of you that know him remember him as being here in a wheelchair, unable to walk, unable to talk, letting his computer do all his talking for him. And I recently had the opportunity, and believe me, his brain, that's the only part of his brain that doesn't work, because we've all heard some humorous things out of him. Had the opportunity last month. He and his mother were in Iraq doing their presentation. And I had never seen the presentation, so wanted to go see it. I reported to y'all earlier that this summer he was going through an experimental program down at UTMB towards walking. After the program, the first program, had the opportunity to go to lunch with him. Sean walked into the cafeteria, into the restaurant, had a cane in one hand, his mother holding on to a gate belt in the other hand. It was a good 200 feet into the restaurant, and it was just amazing to see that. So he's making tremendous progress on that. The only thing that worries me is that someday he's going to regain the use of speech. I don't think we'll be able to put up with him when he does that. But if any of you have the opportunity, and I didn't realize it till I looked at it, go to their website. It's When Sean Speaks, and Sean is spelled S-E-A-N. It's whenseanspeaks.org, to look and see where they go. They were in New Mexico this last week. Next spring, they're going to be in North Carolina, South Carolina. This last year, they've been in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. We think of them just being Texas people, but they're all over the place. But I just want to give a good report on where Sean's coming, because it's just fantastic where he's been.
Any other open discussion? Anything from the board?
One thing I'm going to do real quick is I just have a party here.
Yeah. She had two back there, but she might have been told. Anything to drink in?
You need something?
Okay, that's we're at action items, but I think we've taken care of those.
I just want to I think most people in the audience may know this, but Diane Washington was a trauma registrar that I have worked with probably for 25 years. And so she developed an illness, and it passed away, I guess, a week ago.
About 10 days, yeah.
So, David, Mary Ann, I don't know if she helped. Diana was certainly my kind of person, because instead of talking about a funeral, she had a party at her house to celebrate her life with the people that she loved the most. And so, she will be missed. So if you guys would just say a prayer for her family. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up?
No meeting or call in December, but our next meeting will be January 4th, and I hope you all will participate. Thank you very much for being here on a Saturday night. I'm running to a Longhorn football game now, so I got.
Again, we want to say thank you to Eric
Why would
and
you
to
wanna go
Wanda
there?
for serving on the board.
Thank you. Thank y'all.